welcome to the inaugural episode of the Second Screening Podcast. My name is Nick Lane, and with me, as always, is my good friend Matthew.
Hello, everyone. I'm the one who will bring the IQ of this podcast down because I barely know what I'm doing, and I almost know how to talk.
Hooray! All right. So, how have you been, Matthew?
I've been just fine, busy as always. I don't know how to tell you this, but I know it's called second screening, and I did neither a first nor a second screening within the recent past.
You cocksucker! Yeah, so the idea of the podcast is that we will pick a movie, watch it once, and then 2 or 3 weeks later, within the span of a month, watch it again and record both our first impressions and our second impressions, and then how it changed over time. This podcast kind of got started after the latest Star Wars movie, Star Wars 7: A Newer Hope.
Soft reboot, perfect.
Yeah, exactly. And what happened was that Matthew and I went to see the movie together. I came out elated as can be, as any red-blooded American should, and Matthew came out like a pink-hearted communist who hated the movie.
Yeah, as anybody who listens to this for greater than about 30 seconds will figure out, all I do is flip out about the most mundane things constantly and often.
That's what we call good content.
I hope so.
So, we had a discussion about the movie Star Wars after watching it, and then we took some time and had another discussion over email, where we noticed that after some time, the content of our analysis changed, and I thought that was kind of an interesting conceit, and decided to make a podcast about it, because we like to argue about stupid bullshit, but in a respectful and generally humorous manner, I hope.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, my favorite thing is arguing about things that don't matter and flipping out about stuff. And you're absolutely right. It's interesting when you watch a movie once, you get those first impressions and then you watch them again, which I now realize we're basically voluntarily doing like a 7th grade English assignment. Because I guess that's what adulthood is now, is just doing stuff that you did when you were a kid, except now like you're paying money to do it.
Yeah. And that gives it importance,
That's right. So, suck on that, Miss Healy. As you point out, the fountain, for everyone who doesn't know me, which I guess would be everyone because this is the first episode, this is my favorite movie of all time. I have a tattoo of this movie on me. So while I haven't seen it the first and second time, as per the rules, I have seen it about 15,000 times. And, I'm just going to throw you under the bus here and say that we're breaking your rules of your podcast on episode 1.
Yeah.
So that's a good start.
Usually you lay down the ground rules and then break them over time. That's called good storytelling. However, we need to rewind just a second, because we actually haven't introduced the movie that we are reviewing just yet. As Matthew mentioned, we had watched The Fountain. The Fountain is a Darren Aronofsky film starring Hugh Jackman, Rachel Weisz.
That's pretty much it.
I've been screwing up people's names all this week. My friend recently started dating this girl, and her name's Alicia, and I know how it's spelled, but for some reason, when I first was talking about her, I was like, oh, Alicia.
Oh, yeah, Alicia. Oh, that would be what, if she was Hispanic, it'd be Alicia.
Yeah, exactly. I guess maybe I'm just slowly transitioning into a Spaniard.
Well, in this movie, there is a Spaniard, and it's played by Hugh Jackman, who is my favorite actor, so, that's fantastic.
Yeah, so we got Rachel Weisz, Ellen Burstyn, Mark Margolis, and Stephen McHattie. I mean,
for the most part, this movie, there's pretty much two characters, right? It's two actors. It's Hugh Jackman and Rachel Weisz, main Weisz, right?
Yeah, and a collection of other people. Although someone I found to be quite interesting.
The guy from Remember the Titans.
The guy from Mallrats is in it.
Yeah. He's the one who has to go get the samples from the old growth Guatemalan tree.
Yeah, exactly. That's Ethan Suplee.
Yeah, of course.
If I'm saying his name right, it could be Ethan Suplee. I don't know, but he was in Mallrats. That was the first thing I saw, and I was like, man, I hope he got to see that schooner someday.
I hope so too.
So so we're watching The Fountain, and I really liked it. I'm going to give a quick story about my first introduction to the movie itself. Back when it first came out in 2006, I believe. 2006. You're close. You're very close. Back when it came out in 2006, I was in the movie theaters and I hadn't watched it. It didn't really strike my fancy. I was at the time more of just like I'm always a casual moviegoer, but I kind of just wanted to go see like fun movies. So I went and saw some movie. I don't even remember what it was at the time. And I was in the bathroom. This guy came in, and he, not to say that people who have a certain dialect sound stupid, just this gentleman sounded dumb as hell. He's like, you know that movie, The Fountain? It's one of those movies that you can only ask the director what it means. And after having watched the movie once, even twice, that sentence structure didn't really work out, but whatever, we'll roll with it. After having watching it, it is a very easy movie to figure out. It really wasn't, it's not that conceptually difficult.
I agree. I mean, one of the things that actually kind of bugs me is people who say things about art, which is you can kind of decide whatever art is on your own. I get what they're coming from. There's certainly something to be interpreted by the viewer. However, I do think that generally most artists kind of have something that kind of they want to portray. And what separates good movies from bad movies, at least a little bit to me, is basically, does the director spell everything out? I think that's bad. However, if the director makes everything so vague in an attempt to be profound, I also think that's bad. And one thing I like about The Fountain that, we'll discuss is basically, I think there's multiple ways you can go with it. And I obviously have my own theory that I've fleshed out over the many times I've viewed it. But yeah, in terms of that guy, I don't exactly think it's a theory of relativity. I mean, I think that a casual viewer could kind of figure out something, or at least get an opinion after a watching, but you know how the Americans are.
Yes, exactly. Which is to say that we are Americans as well.
We're dumb as hell.
We're dumb as hell. So to give a brief plot synopsis, Hugh Jackman's character, Thomas, is a neurological surgeon. It seems like he's a research scientist.
Yes.
Studying...
If I can stop you here.
Okay, go ahead.
So
you know the movie better, so please go ahead.
Well, yeah, so I actually want you to explain it because you recently watched it, but I'll probably jump in because I'm that kind of guy. So...
Dickhead.
Yeah, he's not wrong. So there's usually three kind of characters that Hugh Jackman plays, and I think it might be best if we kind of stick with them just to keep the timeline straight, because that's usually where most people go off the rails with The Fountain, right?
Okay.
It's trying to figure out the timeline. And so, or if there is a timeline, I'm not saying there is, but basically there's Tom, the astronaut, so he's kind of in the bubble, which is a spaceship. Yeah. There's Tommy, who is the doctor, and I believe he's a neurosurgeon, and there's Tomas, who's the conquistador.
Okay.
And so...
all right. Okay, I didn't actually. Wow, I didn't even know that his name was Tom Creo. Yeah. I didn't realize when he was in. I call it the Snow Globe, which is the astronaut.
Snow Globe place.
Yeah. And so Tommy, I should say, Tommy is the neurological surgeon who is researching a cure for tumors, cancer, cancerous growth. Gross cancer, cancerous growth. And you discovered that the reason why he's doing that is his wife, Isabel, is... Izzy, sorry.
Rachel Weisz is Izzy, and Isabella
is the Queen of Spain from the Conquistador timeline.
Yeah.
So, I just remember as Isabel. I don't really care for the name Izzy. It reminds me of the pizza joint is the reason why. There was a pizza joint that had like a buffet style, like with pizza, called Izzy's.
Yes.
And so I was just like, Izzy, I'm like, no.
I'm going to need you to be a little bit more esoteric so that our audience can really connect with us.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I never cared for Izzy.
Okay, no, fair enough.
It's also a diminutive name, and I'm not a huge fan of diminutive nicknames.
Well, Izzy goes with Thomas, right?
Yeah, or Tommy, I should say.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Yeah, Izzy goes with Tommy because they're both hip and cool. They know what the kids are about.
I guess.
Getting and fighting cancer.
You know, when I was a young 26-year-old, I'm guessing was their age at the time or whatever, I was getting cancer all the time, and then we had to fight it, much like the Scooby-Doo gang.
Jinkies.
Yeah, so he's trying to fight the cancer that his wife has, and he is researching this via different treatment methods on they're not monkeys, they're baboons of some kind.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah, I remember his name is Donovan.
There's Donovan, and then there was the second one who is Kane. And I thought that might have had some importance, but I realized it doesn't at all.
I thought they were both Donovan.
No.
Oh, this is what I get for not watching the movie.
Yeah, you suck. So there's Donovan, and I was like, okay, that's a pretty standard name. That doesn't mean anything. But then I saw Cain, and I was like, holy shit. Now we're getting into the allegory of some kind, a biblical allegory. And it doesn't actually play out. I think they were just referencing it. It would have made sense if, like, the first one was named Abel, and there was, like, a transfer between Cain to Abel that killed Abel. That would have played out, but it didn't. It was just, we're naming it Cain because we're referencing the Bible, I guess.
Fair enough.
Yeah. And that was the only part where I was like, this movie's dense with allegory and metaphors, and that was one of the times where it didn't really play out.
Gotta have a red herring every now and again.
Yeah, exactly.
Right back to Scooby-Doo.
Yeah, exactly. And so, tangent. Did you ever watch the cartoon A Pup Named Scooby-Doo?
Yeah.
And there was a character named Red Herring. I loved it.
Yeah, I was a kid and I didn't know what a red herring was. Yeah. And I was like, and he had red hair, and I was like, oh, that's kind of funny. And then I watched it as an adult, and it was like, what?
That is like the funniest joke in the world to me. Like, looking back now, I'm like, God, I was such an idiot as a kid.
No, kids are idiots. All kids
are idiots. If you're a kid, you're an idiot right now. So his wife, Izzy, is also an author of some kind, which was kind of interesting. The person who has cancer, and she's writing this story about a conquistador.
And the name of the story is The Fountain.
The Fountain, yeah, exactly. Which I forgot that part. So it's, kind of a Inception sort of thing, a story within a story, right?
Sure.
Named after the same thing.
Yes.
And so she's writing this book, The Fountain, about a conquistador who goes to the New World trying to find the Fountain of Youth.
The Fountain of Youth.
Yeah. And as her life progresses, as her death comes near, she wants her husband, Tommy, to finish the book. And so as Tommy is researching these various extracts from, plants from around the world, he finds this one, he tries something from a tree in South America, which is also where Izzy's story is set.
Yeah, the old growth tree from Guatemala.
Yeah, exactly. And what happens is that Donovan, or maybe at this point is Cain, Donovan, starts to show signs of cellular regeneration. He starts getting younger and younger. Apparently, he's showing his brain scans and tests are showing results from when he was 6 years old, and apparently he's like a 9-year-old monkey.
Yeah, cognitive improvement of a younger mind.
Yes, exactly. And so, but however, it's not having impact on the tumor that baboon. They're baboons, right?
I don't have time to dice up monkeys, and if you are a monkey scientist, please email us about how wrong we are, but we're just gonna go with
monkey.
Baboon.
Yeah, baboon. Okay, we're gonna go with baboon. I thought we were gonna go with monkey and just be absolutely wrong, but no, let's go with baboon.
Let's go with baboon so we can be more specifically wrong or specifically right. Fortune favors the bold.
Hooray. So, and so Tommy is only concerned about
the
tumors, and everyone else is jizzing themselves over the fact that they've fucking discovered the Fountain of Youth. Because of course they are. They want to destroy death just like anyone else does.
Death is a disease.
Which comes into play later.
Yes.
So as Izzy's cancer is kind of taking over, she, turns to Tommy to finish the book. Her, life is coming to an end, and she's come to accept that.
Yes.
Along the way, she, there's been glimpses of, well, not glimpses, but she's told stories of her past where she went to Guatemala to kind of research this story that she wants to write about the Fountain of Youth and the conquistadors who were looking for it at the time. And she got introduced to the phrase, the road to awe.
Death is the road to awe.
Death is the road to awe, yes. Which I actually don't understand that phrase at all.
Well, yeah, so that's an interesting thing, and just one last plug. I mean, I probably should have said this earlier, but the soundtrack, I guess, the score to this movie was by Clint Mansell, who does a lot with Aronofsky, and the score is absolutely fantastic. And a lot of things I've been saying are actually the name of the songs from the score. So, "Death is the Road to Awe" is one of the songs.
I did not know that.
Yeah, I listened to that a lot as well.
It's a good song.
It is, and so "Death is the Road to Awe," I guess, is when she talks about Xibalba, which I think I'm kind of jumping ahead of you a little bit. So
yeah,
apologies.
Well, we're kind of skipping around with the plot because this is a hard movie to describe the plot of.
Yeah, it absolutely is. Yeah, so I'll just address this and then I'll let you continue because I think it's very valuable for somebody who isn't me to kind of describe what's going on in the movie. But to me, kind of Death is the Road to Awe. When they talk about Xibalba, which was the Mayan underworld, but it was also kind of the Mayan rebirth. I don't know a whole lot about Mayan mythology except kind of from this movie and the fact that the 2012 guys bought a lot of ammunition that they still have, but they didn't need when they thought they would. But Death is the Road to Awe is if you kind of view that as when you die, you go to Xibalba, you kind of get reborn, first father and all that. So, I mean, I'm not 100% clear on it, but that was kind of what I think they were after. But please continue.
Okay, so speaking on Xibalba and Izzy's travels to Guatemala, she discovers that the Mayan underworld, what happens when you die is you go to Xibalba. Xibalba is also represented in Mayan culture, according to this movie, and I don't know how accurate it is. I assume it is because this is a very dense movie, and I can't believe that they wouldn't do their homework, right? And so Xibalba is represented as a nebula inside the belt of Orion. It's actually the leftmost star that makes up the belt of Orion.
And I believe it's a dying star.
Yes, it's a dying star, but it's surrounded by a nebula. That's correct, yeah. And so the idea is that star is dying, but there's new stars that are being created from the death of that star, which comes into play with the mythology as described in this movie, where the first father, which is the first human, created the world by killing himself. He sacrificed himself and became a great tree, and therefore created the universe around himself.
Yes.
So through death is creation. And that's actually Izzy's main conceit through this entire movie, is that, she's dying, but something can come from it. And at first it seems like what she's talking about is her book. Like her work will live on through her and through her husband Tommy, and she then turns to Tommy to finish the book, and he is, he's like, I'm so confused, how can I do this, I'm not a writer, I'm a neurological surgeon. So he starts reading her book, and her book is about Tomas the Conquistador, who is trying to save Spain from the Grand Inquisitor, from the Spanish Inquisition. So this is set during the time of the Spanish Inquisition.
No one expects the Spanish Inquisition.
No one expects the Spanish Inquisition! And that's how you ruin Monty Python jokes, by repeating them. And so he is trying to save Queen Isabella. Or is it Isabel?
I don't remember.
It's Isabel.
Isabel, okay, that's what I thought. Okay, yeah.
But,
Queen Isabel sends him and her number one priest to the New World.
Well, so she sends that priest because, one, he's still loyal, and two, he actually made a discovery.
Yeah, he has the dagger and the map, which is why, so she sends Tomas, the priest, he takes his two dudes, and they go to the New World to find the Fountain of Youth.
Essentially, yes. And through that, and so the Grand Inquisitor, who is a Catholic Inquisitor, is trying to kill the Queen or take over Spain because he believes that through death you will have salvation, which is what the teachings of the Church, right? The kingdom of heaven lies beyond the grave. And he feels that it is the greatest form of vanity that the Queen is trying to become immortal.
To live forever would basically be an insult to God.
Yeah, and that's what he's about. But he's also a totally sadistic fucker. And the great thing about that character is that he represents something that's happening in the real world.
Yes.
Which, let's get into this for just a second. The story of the Conquistador is essentially the Shakespearean play within the play. It's describing what's happening in the real world in a summarized fashion to make it easier for the audience to grasp what's happening. Thomas is trying to save the Queen. Thomas is Tommy, obviously, Durr. Queen Isabel is Izzy, Durr. And the Grand Inquisitor is Cancer. And in the movie they say the line, the beast is feeding on the strength of Spain.
Yes. And
is growing strong through it. And so that's a very clear metaphor. And if anyone couldn't understand that, that would be baffling to me.
It's very analogous, yes.
Yeah. And I'm not trying to be insulting. It's just some of these things, Aronofsky is obviously not trying to hold our hands through it, but it's also not such a clouded metaphor that it would be that hard to come with.
And that's what I enjoy is, it's basically, if he basically spells it out for you, then that's not very interesting, but he gives you enough that if you apply some critical thought, you can basically kind of figure that out.
Figure it out, yeah, exactly. So, and I very much enjoyed that. They go to the New World. Thomas, the Conquistadors, and the priests go to the New World to try and find the Fountain of Youth using this dagger and a map. So they found that there's these 4 holes in the dagger that they were able to triangulate this hidden pyramid. That is
Was it Chichen Itza, or am I just
It sounds right.
Am I making that up?
You might be making that up.
I'm probably making that up. All right.
So they're going and they're lost because it's the fucking rainforest. Of course you're going to get lost.
Well, also, that's analogous to Tommy trying new things and not getting it.
Yeah.
Basically going in circles, metaphorically and literally.
And so the other conquistadors, or I don't even know what they are, he's a conquistador. The other people who are there, who are soldiers,
they're conquistadors.
I guess so.
Yeah, I mean, he's in charge, but they're still conquistadors.
I guess
also
that's
his
the
bros.
case. Yeah, supposedly.
Yeah.
So they're frustrated because they can't find what they're looking for, and that obviously is analogous to Tommy's own feelings, where he's fucking frustrated because he keeps getting close to something that will save his wife's life.
Yes.
But he's not quite getting there.
Yes.
And then all of a sudden there's this like great discovery. The priest has found the hidden pyramid, which is like this kind of interesting scene where he's like standing like where he feels like he should, and he holds the dagger up to the sky, and he
sees the stars.
The stars line up with Jabalba in the middle.
Yeah.
And then he starts walking away confused, and then there's like a flash of lightning, and the rain comes, and it washes away this mud that he was standing on to find a placard in the ground, essentially.
Yes,
like
a piece of stone.
Yeah, in the ground.
Which the dagger
fits
plugged into,
yeah.
and then I believe the blade pointed in the direction they needed to go, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
But then he looks up at the direction of the blade, and this is the part where it's like, movies are movies, right? It kind of pulled me away for a second, where he looks up and there's a flash of lightning and there's a fucking pyramid there.
Well, rainforest,
yeah. And so that was the only part where I'm like, alright, come on.
Yeah.
So, it's like you couldn't see a pyramid in the dark. And I get it, like it's supposed to be, he's in the rainforest and it's true darkness, but from the perspective of the audience, which is a omnipresent or omniscient viewpoint, everything was really well lit. And it had to be because it's a movie, and I get that. I get it. It was just one of those times where I'm like, that could have been done a little bit differently. It could have
been done a little bit better, fair enough.
Yeah. So that was one of the few niggling points I had. So the conquistadors go after a big fight, which is Tommy's frustration boiling over. Almost all of the conquistadors are killed except for two.
Yes.
And the priest is killed.
Correct.
So in a sense, his guiding way is destroyed, and he has to just move forward on this one path.
Well, I think at that point it's basically he has to take the leap of faith, right? Mm-hmm. Because the authoritative position is now gone. And so the question is he going to take that leap of faith and go on his own or not?
Yeah, okay. And I agree with that. So he goes, and they are thoroughly just trounced by the Mayans. I love the line at the beginning. So the beginning of the movie starts with them being destroyed by the Mayans.
Yes.
When one of the conquistadors, they discover that a trap has been laid for him, and then suddenly all these Mayans appear, and he yells, "Pagans!" I just love that line.
It's very appropriate for the time.
It is. It's very accurate. They are, in fact, the definition of pagans.
Yes.
It was just so funny to I've never in my life thought to describe someone as a pagan, like just being like upset at them, like, you pagan fuck.
Yeah, do what you gotta do.
Do what you gotta do. I loved it, and it was one of those like little bits that I very much appreciated. So they get captured, and he is taken before the guardian of essentially Eden. At this point now
at that point it does. I do agree with you that it transitions to Eden.
Yeah. And so which is an interesting take, because Eden is oftentimes thought to be in Africa.
Yes.
Right. But it's a different take on Eden and going to South America, and I kind of like that idea.
I actually really did like that too, because, I kind of, grew up religious, and so I did always think that it was, in Africa, but why not Central America?
Sure,
well, I mean, well, here's the other point, I suppose.
Not Central America, South America.
Sorry, thank you. Guatemala is in Central America. We'll fix that later. But
I actually had that thought as well. I'm like, isn't Guatemala in Central America?
Yeah.
But they describe going to South America.
I don't remember that, but I believe you. But anyways, so the key
Maybe
is,
I've just been a dumb idiot this entire time.
That's probably true. No, that's good. Dozens of people on the internet will know that. But you have to remember,
ones of people will know that.
It's just going to be us.
Yeah.
But after Adam and Eve get kicked out of the Garden of Eden, God hides it.
Yes.
So maybe that's it, right? Mm-hmm. Maybe it was in Africa and they get kicked out, and maybe he hid it and moved it to Central South America. And if you're a geologist, just tell us.
Yeah. It's almost like God can do anything.
Almost.
What
a cool guy.
Yeah. they are then confronted with the Guardian of Eden, which at the beginning of the movie is a description of when God kicked Adam and Eve out of Eden, he placed a guardian who had a flaming sword.
Was that Gabriel, I think, maybe?
I believe Gabriel is the angel, but I don't think they referred to him by name. But
no, I don't think so. But yeah,
Catholic mythology, he is Gabriel. Yeah,
yes,
with the flaming sword. And so the protector of Eden, in this case, in the book, The Fountain, inside the movie, The Fountain, has a flaming sword.
Yes.
And that was super dope.
That was dope.
And, he's yelling at Thomas, and we cut away.
Yes.
At that point, it looks like Thomas is about to die, and then we cut away. Back to the main plot. However, weaved throughout these two plot lines of Tommy, the surgeon, and Tomas, the conquistador, has been Tom Creo, the astronaut. I like to call him the snow globe man.
Okay.
Because what's happening is that weaved throughout it, like I was saying, is these scenes of a bald, monk-looking man flying through space in a snow globe.
Doing Tai Chi,
which I noticed that was one of the things, and I want to get into it when we go into our second screening, but I did notice him doing karate the second time, or Tai Chi, and it didn't have anything to do with anything.
Well, yeah.
And so he's in the snow globe going through space, and the idea is that they're going to Xibalba. He's in this snow globe with a giant tree, and the tree takes up 85% of the snow globe. He'll take bits and pieces off the tree and eat it. The interesting part is that the tree will react every time he puts his hand up to it, and this is a big part of the scene. There's these little hairs on the tree that have this static electrical attraction to his hand every time he puts it up to it.
Yes.
There's actually 3 instances throughout the movie that's doing it. Act 1, Act 2, and Act 3, obviously.
Yes.
In Act 1, there's a strong charge. I'm getting ahead of myself. There's a strong charge. Act 2, there's a moderate charge. And then Act 3, there's no charge at all. So he's flying to a nebula, which is obviously Xibalba. And the idea is that my impression is that the Snow Globe Man is the derivative of the characters. The tree is Izzy, and Tom Creo is Tommy. And it's supposed to represent their souls.
Okay.
So it's Tommy's soul and his internal struggle with trying to save his wife while doing everything he can for her. Okay. But that's regrettable because in the sense that she's playing a passive role in her own life leading up to her death because Tommy is the only active character. And in the main Tommy Izzy timeline, that's kind of what's happening. Is that she tries to influence him and tries to get him to, realize that she's dying and have peace with it, and he is not having any part of that.
Yes.
And so that's kind of, I feel like that's what I mean by derivative in the sense that she is passive, and in that snow globe she's a tree and can't do fucking anything.
Yes.
And he's taking bits and pieces of her, of the last bits of her remnants, and trying to maintain himself through her.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough. And we'll get back to that because I want you to finish your evaluation of basically the movie, I guess, with the synopsis, and then we'll get back to that because I have many opinions which you will all hear whether you want to or not.
Yep. So, as the movie goes on, Izzy is in the hospital, she's dying, and Tommy's trying to save her life. And we're cutting out, we're doing a bit of a disservice.
Well, you have to watch the movie.
You have to watch the movie.
You have to watch the movie.
It's an incredible movie.
Yeah.
And so she's in the hospital and Tommy's with her and he's trying to comfort her, but at the same time he keeps getting pulled back to his job trying to find a cure for her.
I mean, it's his last ditch effort.
Yeah, exactly. And you come to realize through watching this movie, particularly through that super hot bathroom scene.
That is hot.
Yeah.
I'm going to wrestle my wife into a bathtub and then get my clothes all soapy and then drag that throughout the house.
Yep.
And then now we're way better than we were before.
Yeah, exactly. That's how you fix relationships is soapy bathroom sex.
Nailed it.
Yeah. Not to say that, Matthew, you have a wife currently.
Well,
that's a future tense.
Ladies.
So just having a little drink. So while Izzy's in the hospital, there's, a couple of dramatic scenes there where, they're trying to comfort each other. It's not just Tommy's trying to comfort her. She's also trying to comfort Tommy because she is ready to die. And Tommy is not at all ready to let go, which is evidenced by the Tom Creo snow globe scenes.
Sure.
And there's, he gets into a argument with the doctor who's treating her, and she's in the process of dying, and he literally punches the doctor.
We've all done it.
Yeah, we've all been there. We've all punched a doctor.
Yeah, we've all punched a doctor.
And I guess it is one of those things where it's obvious that he is a genius medical researcher. However, the other doctor, the ER doctor, doesn't know that. But he's like, I'm a doctor. And then the guy's like pulling him away, and then he just clocks him.
Yeah.
And, it's like, you can feel bad for a guy whose wife is dying, right? But at the point when someone punches you, you're just like, fuck that guy.
Yeah.
And that's pretty evidenced by the doctor. He's like, fuck this guy.
Well, and you see it in pretty much anything that involves, the emotional state of being involved. The old joke of any lawyer who represents himself as a fool for a client, right? It's like, even though, Tommy is kind of a medical genius, it's a completely different thing, and, you kind of see that.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. So, Izzy dies. Spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert.
Izzy dies. I love that we did the spoiler alert.
If you got this far without watching the movie, then I just don't understand.
Yeah, exactly. Which, I'm going on a side tangent, is actually one of the troubles with doing a movie podcast. There's another movie podcast that I very much enjoy called Cinephilia Anonymous. They didn't talk about the movie like we're talking about it. They didn't want to spoil anything, and we clearly don't give a shit about that.
Yeah.
Where it was hard to follow along, because they're like, you should see the movie first and then come listen to our analysis, where we're just kind of like, everything is out the door.
Yeah, no, I mean,
and I like that better,
There's
honestly.
no way you could talk about this without...
Yeah, I agree. This movie, definitely.
Yeah. Izzy dies.
Yeah, so Izzy dies. We cut back to Tom Creo in the snow globe, the astronaut, and they're approaching the nebula. They're in the nebula, actually. They're approaching the dead star, and from there, Jabalba, she's supposed to become reborn. And that's his belief, right? Is that she will become reborn. And in this kind of is the analogy that if the tree of life bark that they use on Donovan worked, then Izzy would become reborn, right? But that doesn't happen. Izzy dies, and Tom Creo reaches out his hand, and nothing happens. There's no static charge. There's no life left in the tree, essentially. The static charge was supposed to represent her life force, I suppose. Because the tree itself has no leaves on it to represent livelihood, right? It looks like a tree in winter.
It's a dying tree, yes.
It's a dying tree.
The winter comes into play, yeah.
Yeah, that was very much come into play. She dies, and she's buried in Tommy's boss's farm. Now, throughout the movie, you've been introduced to Tommy's boss, who is played by Ellen Burstyn. Her name is Dr. Lillian Guzzetti. Lillian I find to be very interesting, and I'll talk about that in a second. She's obviously friends with Tommy and Izzy.
Yes.
And there's been established that they're friends from a long, long time ago. She very much cares for Tommy, and she very much cares for Izzy. And while Tommy's been neglecting his wife to focus on research, she's been like yelling at him and getting into fights with him to try and get him to, go be with his fucking wife while she's dying. And he cannot handle the fact that she's dying.
Yes.
She dies, and she's buried on Izzy's family's farm. In a very nice ceremony, Dr. Lillian is giving the eulogy, and Tommy walks away, and he says one of his main conceits for his character, death is a disease, and I will cure it like any other. Exactly. Yes. And so he then devotes his life. It's implied that he devotes his life to curing death, but you don't really see much of that. And the idea being that he devotes his life through great suffering. And I got that implied. Okay. There's nothing that specifically says that, but it seemed like he gave the impression when he was walking away from his wife's grave during the eulogy that he was a man going to war.
Okay.
He was suffering large, and he was going to stomp the shit out of death. And it looked like he was just going to give everything he had until he died.
But he had nothing holding him back.
Yeah,
now,
exactly.
Right?
So it implied great suffering on his part. But we don't get that because it then cuts to Tom Creo, who's dealing with the death of his wife, the tree, in the snow globe. And it's from there that Tom Creo has a bunch of flashbacks to Izzy's life and like her talking about recreation and the various philosophies that are described throughout the movie. And he comes to the realization that he must leave the snow globe and meet Jabalba first.
Okay.
So he then realizes, this is the soul of Tommy, realizes that he must become reborn himself so that, in a way, Izzy can be reborn. In a way.
Okay.
And through that is through her work.
Sure.
So Tom Creo, he climbs up the tree that is representative of his wife Izzy and leaps out of the bubble.
You call it a snow globe.
Yeah, leaps out of the snow globe and meets Jabalba head on.
In full lotus.
Yeah, in full lotus. So it's like, I was watching it with someone, and she thought it was kind of like cultural appropriation, right? It was Western culture taking Eastern culture. While I love the cinematography and the imagery involved in this movie, it definitely felt like something out of a Spencer's Gifts, where it felt like a black velvet neon, like dark light poster, where he's just like a guy.
So Hitman.
Yeah, so Hitman.
Well, I mean, I think, I know white guy, knowing about Eastern culture a little bit. I believe that Buddhism has like the 6 stages, and it's everything's a cycle in Buddhism, which I think everything's kind of a cycle in Mayan culture as well, or at least kind of their religious beliefs, which is, you'll see throughout the movie. But, so if you accept that it honors Buddhism like that, it represents it with the cycles of rebirth and etc. And then also, supposedly Hugh Jackman, it took him like 18 months to get full Lotus for this role. Supposedly,
really?
Same thing with Tai Chi, so.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So then he basically becomes reborn, and he is destroyed, and through his destruction, or that character at the time was destroyed by Jaboba, and it dumps all of his essence into the snow globe that holds Izzy. As soon as he does that, it cuts back to Tomas the Conquistador about to be killed by the Guardian of Eden, and the Guardian of Eden then sees Tom Creo, the astronaut, in full Lotus, and then realizes oh, it's the first father. Holy crap. And then sublimates himself on the ground and is like, please kill me, through you is our road to awe.
Yeah, death is the road to awe.
Death is the road to awa. And Tomas then is like, what the hell is going on? Who is this weirdo? He kills the Mayan guard.
Dutifully slits his throat.
Which the Mayan guard was presenting his throat to him to kill him so that he could then enter Eden. Tomas then enters Eden, which is this really beautiful tree, with this well-maintained, pool.
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah, and I kind of like the pool was really cool. I thought that was very interesting. And then he goes up to this tree that looks exactly like the tree that represented Izzy in the snow globe.
Yes.
And from there, discovers that if he stabs it with the dagger that he had, and then he had been stabbed by the Mayan guard once, and was about to be killed, and he was bleeding out of his side, he put the sap on his wound, and that healed his wound. He's like, holy shit, this is dope. Then he fucking stabs the shit out of the tree, and all this
it's sap.
But it looks like glue. It looks like Elmer's glue.
It looks like Elmer's glue, yeah.
So he just starts drinking this stuff, and he's like, I'm gonna live forever, bitches. So he starts drinking this. He's like, yes, I'm gonna take this back to Isabel, and she's going to be my Eve.
Yes.
Which she says earlier in the movie.
Say, I will be your Eve.
Yeah, I will be your Eve. And he's like, yes, this is gonna be awesome. I'm totally gonna bang the queen. And then he has this abrupt reaction where these flowers start sprouting out of his body.
Out of the wound.
Out of the wound first, and then just takes over his body, and he is just destroyed by nature.
Yes.
Which is to say, which is obviously an analog that you can't kill death. You can only accept it, right? That's what I took from it. I don't know if you agree. You can see where I'm coming from. But
I absolutely see where you're coming from. We'll get to that part later. Yeah.
So Tomas the Conquistador dies, and Tom Creo, the astronaut, has sacrificed himself for Izzy, which is to say that Tommy, has died and then become reborn. Tomas the Conquistador has died, but then be reborn in the form of flowers. Tommy ends the movie by going back to his wife's grave and planting the seed of a tree so that she can be reincarnated in this tree, and that will be her road to awe. And thus the movie ends.
And scene.
So, my first impression, going into first impressions.
Yes, okay.
Is...
Yeah, we're only 1/6 of the way through.
Well, okay, so I think the other two parts are going to be a bit quicker. So, I wrote down a lot of things, and a lot of that I talked about already. My first impression of the movie, if I can recall, was that it was, I very much enjoyed it. I really fucking liked that movie. I know that you've talked about it for forever, but I'm bad at watching movies, so I haven't given it a shot, and I'm glad that you recommended it, because this is a very, very cool movie. I kind of talked about it earlier, but again, my first impressions were to break it down, and that's kind of what I do with every movie. I try and break it down. So obviously, the point of the life of Tommy and Izzy, or that timeline, is the main plot.
Okay.
And everything else is a descriptor to the main plot.
Okay.
The Conquistadors are the play within the play. I already talked about that earlier. And Tom Creo is the soul of the characters.
Okay, yeah, because that was going to be the first question I always ask anybody is, what is the present of this movie, right? Going back to 7th grade English, Miss Healy, right? What is the setting of this movie, as in what is the present?
Yeah, and so I feel like Tommy and Izzy is the present, is the setting, and
Okay.
everything else is associated to that.
Sure. It's basically representing their journey.
Right.
Okay,
Yes,
understood.
exactly. You know, it was an interesting journey, this movie. It's a very interesting journey because it plays with time and it plays with setting, and I can see how that, like we were talking about earlier, it's kind of confusing for people at first. You know, it definitely doesn't tell you a linear story, and I kind of really like that.
Yes.
And that I found to be very refreshing. It was the score was awesome. There were times where there was no sound, no music at all, and those times, at least the one time when like Tommy's like walking through the streets of whatever city they're in, they never describe the setting.
Yeah, because the city doesn't matter. It felt kind of Chicago to me. But it's one of those things where it doesn't matter, right?
Right.
It doesn't matter.
I get the impression of Chicago only because it was snow.
Yes, well, that was part of it. And, you know, in Illinois, it's the only place where you could have a city, well, I guess not the only place, but it's a place where you could have a city like Chicago, but still have a country farm.
Yeah.
Right?
Right. Because we actually, Matthew and myself, recently took a trip through Illinois.
Yes.
And the city was a city, but then everything outside of it was like these beautiful rolling hills and sometimes mountains, and palatial like farms. It was actually quite interesting.
Yes. And actually, now that you mention that, I take back that I think it's Chicago because I did not see one construction cone as he was driving into the city, so I don't think it's Chicago anymore.
Yeah, there's definitely plenty of those. So he's walking through the city and like almost gets hit by a car, but you don't hear anything during that time. Everything's kind of muffled.
Yes.
Which, you know, it's kind of like the muffling of snow, but there's no music. Everything's muffled, and it's him coming to the realization or something that his wife is going to die. And dealing with his wife is about to die, and he is haggard by it. He is stymied. So, yeah, that was my first impression, Matthew.
And so I guess, that's a good pick. So, again, I've seen this movie way too many times. The very first impression, I watched this movie, so it came out, as you mentioned, 2006. I watched it in 2007 on DVD, so if nobody knows what DVD is while they're listening to this, then I hate you.
It's like the super future.
Yeah, and it's actually important, the DVD, because I watched it, and, you know, I know that, you know, there are lots of people who know what DVDs are, but if you ever watch a DVD and just let it play through the movie, it will go through the credits, and then it will basically restart back to the menu. And the menu of this DVD, it plays, I don't remember which song it plays, but it's a very kind of heavy song, and I remember I watched it, and I was just stunned, and it went through the credits, and I was just like still looking at the TV because I didn't feel like moving. I was thinking, you know, I was in awe, and then it went back to the menu, and I think I watched the menu for about 20 minutes, and it was because, you know, the song was playing, and I was still thinking, and so my first impressions was I was just basically blown away, and I don't even remember kind of doing any real analysis of the first impression of this movie. I mostly just kind of took it all in. So, and then it was viewings 2 through 14,614 that I developed, these kind of opinions that I have written down on the sheet of paper in front of me. So that was my first impression of this movie.
Okay. Yeah, and I wonder if I did this movie a disservice, because I first watched it for the purpose of recording this podcast, and so I was kind of being a bit analytical, and I didn't really sit down and enjoy it maybe the way that I should have. Perhaps. I'm more making a hypothetical question than being like, oh, I did this movie a disservice. Perhaps I did. You know, maybe I shouldn't have been so analytical to begin with.
No, I understand where you're coming from, and I don't think there's a correct answer to that. I mean, you know, when I watched it, you know, when this movie first came out, I remember everyone was kind of shocked. Everyone loved it when it came out, and they were especially loving the visuals. And, you know, no matter what you think about this movie, I think it's fair to say that the visuals are absolutely stunning. And then over a few years, I think it kind of suffered from hipster backlash. I don't know if hipster was really a thing kind of in the late 2000s, but people kind of turned on it, and they were basically, basically like, this movie, you know, it's kind of, it tries so hard to be deep, and it's, you know, it's pretty kind of dumb, and like, yeah, it looks cool, but it's, you know, it's just trying so hard, and I never really felt that way, and I guess that was kind of interesting, that the fact that, you know, me watching it as this movie came out and the reactions to it, whereas you watching it years later with a more analytical view, and not that that's a bad lens, it's just a different lens, but I get where you're coming from.
I hate that idea. The like, oh, so-and-so tried too hard. It's the insult, the current day insult, that fucking try hard, right? It's, you know, who cares if someone try hard? And I would rather somebody try hard and make something interesting than someone who didn't try at all and just stumbled into success, right?
For sure. Well, and I absolutely agree with you that, people insulting stuff about trying stuff. And I think, part of me wonders if maybe it might have been people were kind of, this movie might have been too intellectual. Another movie that I love, probably top 5, is Pan's Labyrinth. And I think it kind of suffered not as much, only because it never kind of blew up as much as The Fountain. But I really like Pan's Labyrinth. And I think they're the kind of things where, it's not like you go to a movie theater and it's like 8 hours of a balloon spinning and people are like, that is so deep. Like, it wasn't one of those. Like, he clearly had a point to me. He had a cognizant story. It was well presented. It was visually amazing. Like, this is a complete movie to me, not like an abstract art that you basically make, and then if somebody doesn't like it, you say they just don't understand.
Right.
And I think that it kind of got that backlash, and I don't really know why.
I absolutely agree. It's not like Donnie Darko.
Yes.
So this movie is definitely, it's a very dense movie. It's got a lot of topics that it covers on, but at least there isn't any supplicant reading that you need to go through. Like in our example, Donnie Darko. To actually understand the plot, there's an entire book.
Yeah.
And that's cool. I kind of like that because it's like, all right, well, here's this extra layer of mystery that you need to go. And I also really love Donnie Darko. However, at the same time, a movie needs to stand on its own, and it doesn't need a book to explain the basic concepts of it. And this movie does a very good job of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know we kind of argued at this outside the theater after episode 7 for Electric Boogaloo, where, you definitely judge movies in a vacuum, but you can also judge them in context. And that's one of those things where if I have to read a book to understand a movie,
they failed as a movie.
I think it failed as a movie, absolutely.
Yeah. So first impressions were obviously really good. Second impression, I watched this movie this last week as my second time of watching it.
I didn't because I don't listen to the rules.
Yeah, clearly that's not going to happen for the next movie.
We'll see.
You pile of shit.
I'm not even going to watch it once.
So he's actually, if you don't know, Matthew is actually an anthropomorphic pile of garbage.
He's not wrong. Ladies. So, second impression was really cool. Now, I wonder if I, again, did this movie a disservice because I watched it with somebody else. The person who I'm currently seeing. So we're a bit distracted, but not terribly so. We should really get her in here.
I'm kind of curious. Yeah, that'd be kind of fun, but too bad she's not here. I think she's at Mythic Worlds at the moment.
Nerd,
super nerd. So, before we get into second impression, actually, there's a couple things that I wrote down as notes from my first impression. One of them is that I mentioned this earlier, that Tommy's boss's name is Lillian, and I found that to be quite interesting. For those of you who don't know, Lillian is actually a main character in the book of Genesis during the Adam and Eve saga.
I actually didn't know that.
You didn't?
No, I did not.
It's actually from the Hebrew text. Lillian is Adam's first wife.
Okay.
And it is from Lillian that, like, all the evil in the world comes.
Thanks, Lily.
Yeah. So, did I get that from Neon Genesis Evangelion? Maybe.
Prove it.
Yeah. Illuminati confirmed.
Well, I think I could be wrong. Again, I violated the rules and did not watch this neither first nor second time as we're supposed to. But I believe they call her Lily, do they not?
They might. I don't remember. Okay. I never really cared. I will be honest. I never really cared for her actress.
Oh, see, I thought I loved her because I thought she kind of had like a Judi Dench. Like, she could tell me basically everything would be okay at any time, I would accept it.
So the thing about her, and it's not that her actress did it wrong or anything. It was just she was reacting at a different level constantly than I felt like Hugh Jackman was reacting. She was always, I don't know, there was just something that was slightly off about the way that she was playing that character that I didn't care for. Now, if someone else had played that character, it might have hit a little bit harder for me. And I'm not trying to shit on this actress. It's just the way that she or the director or whoever, the editor, just decided to play that character.
See, I think that might have actually been by design because kind of how I interpreted her through the movie was she was an element, kind of a voice of reason, right? I mean, Tommy's, violating medical and ethical standards, and she's like, you get us shut down by the NIH.
Yeah.
Tommy doesn't really care about the results for anti-aging. He's ready to basically dump the entire experiment to try again, and she's saying, what are you doing? These results are significant.
Right.
And, she comforts Izzy, as Izzy's dying. She's basically there for Tommy. And that's the thing that maybe, this could be the point where I start reading too far into it, right? But her character to me was kind of, the voice of reason. And when you're in the state that Tommy's in, you don't really want to listen to reason, right?
Right.
And maybe maybe that's exactly how she was told to portray it, or maybe that's how she decided to, and that's how I interpreted it.
And I'm not disagreeing with you on that. It's more like the inflections that she used and the tonality of her voice never quite matched up or made sense. And I wonder if maybe they used takes that they felt were more real.
Sure.
But for me, were just slightly off.
Okay.
And yeah, for some reason, it just didn't flow like human speech actually flows.
Okay.
And
I mean, the way, because I'm imagining her scenes in my mind right now, and when she says, like, what are you doing? We could get shut down by the NIH. Like,
yeah,
I always felt that was real.
Right.
Like, because I mean, that's like a huge violation of medical and ethical standards.
I absolutely agree. It's not that that's why I made a point to say that I didn't like her character.
Fair enough.
Because the things that she was saying and everything that she said made perfect sense. It was just the way that they were said and the way that they were acted that just seemed slightly off.
Fair enough.
So, but I liked I'm not trying to shit on her. I liked her. I think that she's a great actress. It's just her role in this didn't really pan out for me.
I accept your point.
Okay. I love that. So I got a couple other notes. One of them, Creo is Spanish for create.
Yes.
Yeah, so I like that. He's obviously being recreated. I like that.
Playa is Spanish for beach, and I've just exhaused my 10th grade Spanish.
Hooray! There we go. One of the other notes, I've got two other notes from my first viewing. Donovan is Irish, by like where the name comes from. And that
beach.
Yeah, that doesn't mean anything. Yeah. I actually wrote Donovan is Irish, doesn't mean shit.
Fantastic. And like, I know the internet can't see this, but I'm looking at his ridiculously hipster notebook, and yeah, it's there.
Yeah. And then I also wrote Izzy is shorthand for Isabella. I actually wrote Isabella, completely forgetting the fact that the character's name is Isabel.
I think it's Twilight, dude. Twilight has ruined us, and especially the region that we're in.
You're
Internet
probably
detectives go nuts trying to figure out where we are.
Yeah.
It's Forks. Forks.
Everyone lives in Forks. So yeah, that was a bit of that. I think I touched on everything from my first viewing. So second screening, the second viewing, I went into watching this movie the second time. We sat down and I started the movie, and as soon as it started, I remember thinking, oh, fuck, I've got a long road ahead of me. Not because it's a long movie. It's actually a normally spaced movie. It's like about 90 minutes to 2 hours. So that's a normal movie. It's just so dense. It's so rich with environment and analogy and topics that it felt like when I sat down to watch it the second time that there was a long haul ahead of me.
It's an emotionally heavy movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, like it's not a movie where it's like, hey, what's up, buddy? Thanks for coming over. Grab a beer. Let's watch the fountain. Like, we're gonna have a good time. We're maybe play some foosball in between. No, it is not that kind of movie. No. Absolutely not.
It was definitely a slog.
Yeah, yeah, it's emotionally heavy. It's one of those things where like you gotta be in the mood to watch this. Again, I've watched this movie a lot.
Yeah, and, you even have a picture from it tattooed on your shoulder.
Yes, I have that.
Super dope.
Yeah, I do have that tattoo, and we'll post that somewhere. And yeah, you basically, it's somebody described, one of our buddies described a motorcycle, which is, if you've got a racing motorcycle, it's not a form of transportation. You have to want to be on a motorcycle, and that's how I feel about a fountain. It's the fountain. It's not a movie. You have to want to watch the fountain.
That's also actually how I feel about most fountains.
you
have to want to watch a fountain.
Yeah, you have to want to watch a fountain.
Whether or not it is the fountain. But yeah, you have to want to sit down and like kind of get into some shit, and that's what this movie. Yeah, but at the same time, that isn't to say that it isn't a fun movie. It's nice to have an intellectual movie to watch. Like I sat down and watched it and had a great time.
Absolutely.
It was awesome. So I actually very much appreciated it the second time because I kind of knew what I was getting into, and I was kind of watching for things in the background, trying figure out. One of them that we talked about earlier was the fact that he was doing Tai Chi in the middle of nowhere. It didn't make any sense.
Sure.
It was one of those things where it's like, it kind of proves Chekhov's point, right? Chekhov's gun being, if you have a gun in the first act, it needs to be fired by the third act. That motherfucker does Tai Chi in the first act and never ever does Tai Chi again.
He never fights anybody with the martial art that 90-year-old grandmas do in the park.
He doesn't even but they don't even do it again. And I imagine that the idea is that they're trying to set up the fact that he is a monk, right? He's a meditative
Yes.
person. I get that they could have done that another way.
I mean, I really felt the Tai Chi, I think there's kind of a loose connection to Buddhism, and kind of things like that. I think that this is a very visually pleasing movie, and I really do feel that the Tai Chi was there just for the visuals, which I don't hate.
No.
And it's like Donovan, right? It's one of those things where if you really wanted to read into it, you could probably find some sort of connection, but I think that for the most part, not everything in movies has to mean something.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
I think the Tai Chi was probably just more for this.
Yeah, and I can agree with that.
Yeah.
It just, upon seeing it the second time, I remember having seen it the first time I saw it and then being like, this doesn't have anything to do with the plot.
Excellent way to lose the forest for the trees, and I'm glad that that's what I'm going to have to deal with in coming episodes.
Exactly.
Fantastic.
So... I also watched this a second time with the subtitles on, and one of the subtitles that I saw was Men Speaking in Mayan.
Right back to losing the forest for the trees. Here we go. All right.
Exactly.
Okay.
But no, that actually goes to the fact that the Mayan Empire was a South American empire.
I think the Incans were South American, and I believe the Mayans and the Aztecs were Central American.
That might have been me just proving that I'm a dumb idiot.
But I'm not sure, and unfortunately we don't live in 2016 where we have all the world's information at our fingertips. And it's not like this is a podcast that we can pause and look up at any time, so we're gonna go with it.
I'm not doing that right now. I'm not doing that even remotely.
Yeah.
One of the things that I did notice, and I actually talked with Aaron about, was the fact that the movie begins at the start of winter.
Okay.
And then ends in the heart of winter.
Okay, fair enough.
Which is, that is obvious that the setting is supposed to be the dying of the year, right?
I mean, do you mean the actual movie or the timelines that you described? Because it does start in Tomas, right?
It does start. So, sorry, what I mean to say is the actual timeline that actually matters, which is Tommy and Izzy. But you're right. The movie starts with Tomas.
Yeah.
And that is in the middle of Guatemala, which it's near the equator, so it could be winter there too, but you never would know.
Yeah.
Sorry. So I should say that the story of Tommy and Izzy starts at the beginning of winter.
I see what you're saying.
And ends in the heart of winter.
Okay, understood.
Which is representative of Izzy's life.
Fair enough.
Her life was coming to an end, and that is the end of the year, right?
Sure.
And that's it wasn't ham-fisted of a metaphor, but it was also one of those, if you've ever read anything, it's kind of an obvious metaphor, I thought.
Sure.
But I liked it a lot. I like that. The attention to detail and if you're going to go for a movie that's heavy in metaphor, put everything. Everything's a metaphor.
Yes.
And I love it. I absolutely love it. I would describe the setting of the movie as orange and black.
Okay.
Everything except for the conquistadors is orange and black.
I don't remember a whole lot of orange. I know a lot of black.
Amber.
Orange.
Amber. Everything is amber and black.
No, even my tattoo has a significant amount of amber. That.
So everything is amber black. When Donovan is getting cut open, Donovan being the baboon, his office, their surgical ward, their house, everything is amber and black. It's all set in a form of dying light.
Yes. Yeah, and that's obviously goes back to, the amazing visuals. And even people that don't really like the movie, that think it's too, to take your words ham-fisted or, things like that. I mean, generally speaking, this movie is visually amazing, and then people kind of turn. Mm-hmm. So fair enough.
One of the things I noticed actually the second time that I didn't notice the first time is that Queen Isabel's dress is a tree.
Yes.
I love that.
Yes.
So this is how dense this movie is that everything that you can look at is a metaphor for something that's happening in the movie.
Yes.
And Queen Isabel's dress is a tree. She's a tree.
Yes.
Turns out she's an ant.
Like I said, I've seen this movie a lot, and every time I watch it, I basically kind of discover just something new, just because, every time you see it, it's one of those things where there's just so much happening, as you're pointing out, that see something new.
Mm-hmm. I love that. And that was something that I came out with, and I think that if I watch it again, something else will pop out to me.
Absolutely.
I wrote down room 620, important, and then I never went and looked up to see if the number 620 was actually important to anything.
That was her hospital room, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
But there was a point where they kind of he was standing near the sign, and they kind of focused on the sign number rather than him. I noticed that the cinematography did this slight blurring effect on him and kind of focused on the number, and I wrote it down, and then I never went back and looked it up.
This is just like our mystery room where you wrote down the color important.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It was 7170. Why?
Yeah. No, and this is one of those things where actually, I don't think that I focused on that, and that's very interesting, and I'd be curious. This is one of those things where you go look up Genesis 6.
I wonder if it's a Bible Bible verse is what I'm... And I wonder if it's actually the Bible verse from the beginning.
Yeah, it probably is.
Go ahead and tell me about your impression the multiple times that you've seen it. I mean, you've already talked about your impression from the first time that you saw it. I'm curious if maybe you can talk about it from your impression from multiple times.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so this will be one of those things. This is probably actually a very good point for that, because this movie, we broke our rules. Number one, we're going to fix it later. You know, I've seen this movie a lot. Every time I watch it, I kind of cry a little, ladies. I like to watch it with girls that I'm dating, ladies, to show them how deep I am.
Yeah.
And my second impression
Look at how interesting I am.
Look at how interesting and sensitive this guy is. And this will kind of be basically my understanding of the movie. And the key to this, by the way, is I'm really glad that you interpreted the way that you did, because there's basically two ways of interpreting this movie, generally accepted. I mean, obviously you can kind of take it however you want. There's some other theories, but the two main theories for this movie, and it goes back to that question, is what is the setting? So one theory is basically what you described, which is the setting is Tommy, the neurosurgeon, and everything else is analogous. Now,
which is a correct.
Which is,
no.
yeah, I guess, yeah. I'm gonna prove you wrong. Just you wait.
Whoa!
No, there's no right and wrong, but there's kind of right and wrong.
Okay.
So the second one, which is, he's slow jerking.
Yeah.
People on the internet.
My dick's been out this entire time.
And mine too. They don't see us.
Yeah.
So the other way is my interpretation of the movie after many viewings, and it took me a while to get to this, and it took me even a while to kind of add evidence to this. So if somebody were to ask me kind of what is the present of this movie, the present of this movie to me, and this is kind of the other competing theory, is that Tom the astronaut is the present.
Huh.
So Tom the astronaut in the snow globe, as you call it, which by the way, if you were to actually make a spaceship for long-range space travel, that's exactly how you would have to make it, because it needs to be a closed ecosystem. Right?
Yeah. I absolutely agree.
Yeah, and so Tom the astronaut is the present. Tommy, the doctor, the neurosurgeon, is Tom's past. So Tommy, the doctor, discovers through his research of the old growth Guatemalan tree the secret to eternal life. And he is the same person that turns into Tom the astronaut. And so what we're actually seeing is Tom the astronaut, and the flashbacks to Tommy are, basically flashbacks of the past. And then Tomas, the conquistador, is the story. And the key is, so Izzy is writing the story. And so she is, Isabel, and Tommy, her husband, is Tomas, the conquistador.
Right.
That is analogous. Now, I believe, and this goes back to where you watched it, I believe that her story kind of ends when Tomas encounters the high priest. And you think that he's going to die, right? Mm-hmm. And that's where she says, finish it, which is another track on the soundtrack. And
I did not know that was the name of a track on the soundtrack.
Yes. And so she basically tells him to finish it. So.
Dun 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 dun. That was a Mortal Kombat.
Finish it! Oh, I should know that because I'm kind of that same age. Hold on. I need more drink for my story.
Yeah, by the way, this entire time we've been drinking scotch.
As you can tell, as our cognitive thoughts break down.
Yeah.
So she tells Tommy to finish it. And this is the part where he loses his wedding ring. And so he loses it. He's looking for it. He can't find his wedding ring. So she dies. He goes back to his room and he knocks over the ink well, I suppose it would be. And he has the quill. And you kind of see him start writing, right? And so in my interpretation, that is where he picks up the story to finish it. So basically everything up from Tomas getting to the high priest is what Izzy wrote.
Right.
And everything after the high priest, when the high priest presents himself, his throat to be cut, that is Tom, the astronaut, finishing the story because he couldn't finish it when he was Tommy.
Oh, interesting.
Yes.
See, I took it the same way as you did, but that Tommy did finish it after that fact.
Yes. Yeah. And that's the other competing theory. Now, the thing that I have to add in the movie that I feel actually kind of adds to my theory, which is why it's right, and if anybody disagrees, they're wrong. I'm just kidding. You can interpret however you want, unless it's different. But Tom the astronaut...
This is a podcast. This isn't Tumblr.
Oh, I don't know what that is.
Okay,
I'm old. Okay, so when Tommy the doctor loses his wedding ring, he goes back, he knocks over it, and he grabs the fountain pen, cute, and he knocks over the thing, and he tattoos the wedding ring on his finger.
Yes.
Now, Tom the astronaut has that same tattoo, and I don't know if you noticed or not in your second viewing, but Tom the astronaut also
faded.
Well, it's faded, and he also has all of his rings up his arm, and what he's using to tattoo himself is a broken fountain pen.
Yes, I did notice that. Yeah. And actually, I'll lend credence to this theory that you're positing that the Tom Creo is the present, because I remember him having all these tattoos up and down his arm.
Yes.
Much like the ring of a tree would have.
Yes.
And I just thought it was kind of an interesting visual thing that they were doing to describe time.
Yeah.
But where would he get the time from unless he was an immortal being?
Yeah.
I dig it. All right. Yeah. Okay. Well, I can dig it, sucker.
Can you dig it?
Sucker!
And then the other thing is, as you pointed out, so Izzy, nice. So Izzy, she dies and she, he plants a tree over her grave. Mm-hmm. And to me, that tree is what he turns into his spaceship. And so to me, Tom the astronaut, that is actually Izzy in that tree is, I guess the same whatever tree from the old growth tree from Guatemala. Right. Basically, so boiling it all down, Tommy, the neurosurgeon, finds the fountain in this medical advancement too late to save Izzy. Yeah. And basically he plants that tree over Izzy's grave and then over, I guess it would probably be, hundreds of thousands of years based on how far away Xibalba is. He basically was traveling through the universe, going to Xibalba, basically bringing Izzy to Xibalba.
Yeah. And it's not even hundreds of thousands of years. That, Orion is many thousands of light years away, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Well, the first star, because the funny thing about constellations, if you don't realize, is that they're not a two-dimensional object.
That's
so
true.
that star could be hundreds of millions of light years away.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
But he could be an immortal. He could be an immortal being at this point.
And that's my interpretation of it. Is basically, Izzy's tree is dying because he's flying through to Xibalba, and then basically he picks up the story and he actually finishes it. And at that point, and it's kind of analogous to me because he gets past the high priest, he goes to the tree, he drinks the sap, he basically sacrifices his life. Tomas, the conquistador, sacrifices his life to be reborn at the same time that Tom the astronaut sacrifices his life to be reborn. And that's basically the cycle of the movie to me.
Yeah.
And that's how I kind of interpret it.
Well, you know what? That's a very interesting interpretation.
Yeah.
Too bad it's bullshit.
Well, hey.
No,
I didn't say I was smart.
No.
I said that's how I watched it.
I didn't say, I'm not saying I'm smart. I'm just saying I'm right.
Yeah.
No, it was, that's actually a very interesting point and one that I didn't pick up on.
Yeah.
Because I kind of took the astronaut, the snow globe man, as kind of a throwaway. I just thought that he was like an interesting thing that the director was throwing in. I never once contemplated the idea that he could have been the primary setting. And I wish that I had, because you make a cogent point and there's enough evidence to support that. And I commend you, sir.
Well, and that's the thing where, if we could have gone back in time 10 years, I would have loved, because I probably should have mentioned this earlier. My first impression, I think I probably thought the same way, which was okay, this is kind of cool. And then it was only on future viewings that I kind of figured out, wait, this might not be what I think it is. Mm-hmm. And I guess to me, after many, many viewings, the theory connecting the conquistador to the astronaut was just too far to me, because there's no way for me that I can view it to connect the conquistador drinking the sap, becoming a tree, to the astronaut. Now, if you completely throw away Tom the astronaut, then so be it. But some people try to connect those two, and I never really followed it.
No, I always, there doesn't seem to be anything to the conquistador other than being Izzy's story.
I definitely think that, I
don't think that he was the past life of Tommy.
No,
and
for
I don't
sure.
Think that
no, I think he was always the story. You even tell, because you'll see the reading on the page, and it's, the conquistador. The conquistador is definitely in the story.
Right. He's not a real person. However, I could see that Tom Creo and Tommy might be the same person.
Yeah.
Because of the wedding band tattoo, which seemed like the most metal way to give yourself a tattoo was stab yourself with a fountain pen. I have a fountain pen in front of me, and I can't imagine stabbing myself with this to give myself a tattoo.
We're going to do that real time.
Wow, really?
Yeah.
I was like, we both have tattoos, and I can't imagine... I could imagine being in enough grief to stab myself with this.
Yeah.
This isn't even a fine point fountain pen, is the thing.
Yeah, that would hurt.
Yeah.
Just don't stab me with that.
No. There are fine... This is a medium point fountain pen. There are fine point fountain pens, and I could maybe see it with that. But this is... his was clearly a medium point, because you can see the little ball at the end.
Yeah, the ball, yeah, absolutely.
And you can see the ball on mine.
Yes.
And it...
Yeah, there's nothing pleasant about what he does.
No, yeah. So I could see being in enough grief to be like, I'm punishing myself.
Well, especially losing your wedding ring. Right?
Which is so weird, because he's like, I set it here, and now it's gone.
Yeah. It was Donovan.
Yeah, fucking Donovan. fucking Kane, that shithead baboon. Cool. Alright, so that's the second viewing. Yeah, no, I really loved this movie. I thought this was a really cool movie, visually awesome. If anyone says that, it's a try-hard movie, they're right. I mean, it's clear that it's a movie that someone is trying hard, and they should be commended.
I think that it goes back to one of my, things that we've kind of talked about offline, which is intellectual laziness, right?
Yeah.
Which is, sometimes things do try too hard to be profound, but I don't think The Fountain is one of them. And I think that if anybody kind of criticizes it, I think that they may not have wanted to think a little.
Yeah.
You know, if you go see Transformers,
you want to be entertained.
You want to be entertained, and this is not one of those movies.
Yeah. Well, it's entertaining in a different way, but yeah, this is a movie that you go into wanting to be challenged.
Yes.
Whereas like Transformers or any of its ilk are the kind that you want to go into shut your brain off.
It's popcorn flicks, which have their place.
Oh my god. So speaking of this is a tangent. I lived in Korea for about a year. Actually, not about a year exactly. And during that time, I went to see Transformers 3. And
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, that was a terrible, shitty movie.
Yes.
But it was so amazing for me to watch it in a country outside of America because there is literally a point where Optimus Prime, an alien robot, stands up and there's a giant American flag flapping behind him.
God bless us.
I know, I was just like, it was never so stark a iconography as when I was living outside of America.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
Absolutely.
I was just like, holy shit, this alien robot loves America so much.
I mean, who doesn't? Which segues us into our next second viewing, Transformers
There's
3.
Which I don't actually know the tagline or the
I think, is that Dark Side of the Moon?
No. It's not Dark Side. It's not Dark Side of the Moon, because that was never a Transformers movie, you dumb idiot. It was...
He's looking it up right. I'm going to narrate what's happening. He's typing on his not iPad.
Yeah, it is a Samsung Tab Pro.
Yeah, of course.
It was... You were actually really
I
close.
know it was. Choke on it.
It was Dark of the Moon.
That's it. Nailed it. Hit it with the old Pink Floyd album.
So it might have actually been the...
That's not going to be the first or last time that happens.
I don't remember that was actually the movie that I saw. But that is the right time frame. What time was Transformers 2? Maybe that was the one I saw. I'm just curious.
Yeah.
I'm not cutting this.
No, yeah. What was the tagline for Transformers 2? Wait, what was Revenge of the Fallen? That was 4.
Nope, that was 2.
Was it?
Yeah, it wasn't that one though. Because I lived in Korea from 2010 to 2011.
I hate Michael Bay so much because those movies are so bad, and I know them. I know their taglines enough.
So yeah, the fact that I haven't seen anything except for Transformers and Transformers 3, and I've not seen any of the others, but I do know their tagline.
Yeah.
It's not the tagline. The tagline is like they came from outer space to save our butts.
Well,
it's
the
subtitle. Yeah, that's it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So okay. So anyway, so what is our next movie? Because I think I can probably do this one properly, as in the next.
Yeah. So there's actually been some discussion about what our next one should be.
Oh.
We originally thought that it was going to be Contact.
But I've seen that, and I'm reading it.
So you're reading it.
Yeah.
And I've already seen it as well.
Yeah, no words should have sent a poet.
Is that from?
Yeah.
Oh. I haven't seen that in a long time, so I'll definitely watch it twice.
Oh, we can't break our rules the second time.
Okay, so I think that the next movie that we should watch, because of a stupid incident on my part, is the movie Gravity.
The movie Gravity.
So we're going to watch Gravity next, and the reason why we're going to watch that is because we've both neither seen it. Despite the fact that it's a fairly popular movie, I think that it's going to be decently in our wheelhouse of the movies that we like.
Absolutely.
And so what happened was that, so Matthew and myself like to go to trivia, and there was a Matt Damon round.
Classic Matt Damon.
And he was in the movie Interstellar.
Which I've also not seen, but I know enough about it.
But I'd seen it once.
Okay.
And we might have to watch it.
Yeah, we'll put that on the list.
I super love that movie.
Okay.
But for some reason, in my head, I got Gravity and Interstellar confused. And during that round, it was a bonus point for 2 points.
Yes.
I said the movie Gravity, which does not at all have Matthew Damon in it. It has George Clooney and Sandra Bullock.
It's easy to confuse Gravity with other movies because Gravity has literally 2 actors and one of them is just a voice. And then the other movie has everybody famous ever. So it's an easy mistake to make.
Clearly.
It cost us 2 points.
2 points.
Yeah.
2 points that actually would not have mattered at all.
It doesn't, they don't know that.
Yeah. However.
They don't need that.
Yeah, they do need it. So, because of that, we're gonna see Gravity next.
Gravity.
Alright? So thank you for listening to our first episode of the Second Screening Podcast. Matthew, how do you feel?
I had a great time, and as I mentioned to you, if these just go into the bowels of the internet, never to be heard again, I still think that it was fantastic, and I look forward to more of these.
Me too. For the ones of you who might be listening to this on random, thanks for listening, and we'll be back next month with Gravity.
Gravity.